Thank you very much. Senator Carr, are you seeking the call?
Yes, if I could, please. Thank
Of course.
you very much. Thank you, Mr. Jenkinson. So you're acting CEO, is that correct?
That's correct, Senator Carr.
Well, I welcome you. Now, on the 9th of September, the ANSTO chair put out a statement. So that's the case, isn't it? Dr. Annabelle Bennett put out a statement concerning the departure of Dr. Patterson.
That's correct.
And she said that Dr. Adi Patterson had resigned as CEO of ANSTO slightly ahead of time of his term. He decided to take a period of leave before formally finishing. Now, I want to take you to that statement in detail. Did Dr. Patterson resign, or was he asked to resign by the board?
As per the statement from our board chair, Dr. Patterson resigned, and he's filling a period before his official departure at the end of the year.
I see. So you'll be able to advise me as to whether there was any correspondence between the ANSTO board and or the minister concerning his performance prior to the announcement of his resignation.
Thank you, Dr. I'd have to take that on notice, because that would be correspondence between the board chair and the minister that I'm not aware of.
No. Between the board and or the minister and Dr. Patterson concerning his performance.
A discussion between the board and Dr. Patterson on his performance would be a matter for them that would need to ask Dr. Patterson about.
All right. So, is there any of the officers here that are familiar with the matters between the board and the CEO?
Yes, Senator. David Lucchetti, Acting Head of the Science and Commercialisation Policy Division.
Yes. You're familiar with the correspondence?
I'm not aware of any correspondence between the board and the minister, Senator.
So you're not aware, or there was no correspondence?
Well, I'm not aware. I don't believe there was, but I can't. There's nothing that I have seen that suggests otherwise.
Okay. So if I could then ask the acting CEO, were there any legal expenses incurred by ANSTO in the settlement of the terms of Dr. Patterson's resignation?
There would have been some legal expenses incurred, yes.
How much?
That information I don't have, but I would be able to get for you.
Sorry, you don't have it in front of you, or you don't have it at all?
No.
What's the story?
I don't know the amounts or the information. But
So does any of the other officers of the executive know the amounts?
No.
Mr. Lucchetti, do you know the amounts?
I'm not aware. No, Senator.
Was it, Ms. Jenkinson, was it necessary to increase the offer of the payout to Dr. Patterson's contract?
I'm not aware of any information around that subject at all, Senator.
You're not very well informed, Mr. Jenkinson, are you?
Not around the details of that component, Senator Carr.
Sorry, you're not?
Not around the details of that interaction between...
What was the payout in terms of months?
So, Eddie Cochran is still the CEO of ANSTO, and he completes his term at the end of this year, so there is no term, there's no payout in terms of months at this stage.
So his resignation takes effect on what date?
The last day of the year.
Sorry?
The last day of this year.
Last day of the year. And he's been on leave for how long?
He's currently on extended leave and has been since the end of July.
11th of July.
No, the end of July, sorry.
End of July, I see. So when the CEO when the board chairman said that the resignation was slightly ahead of time, it's not entirely accurate, is it?
I think the obviously that's a judgment discussion and it's subjective.
Can you repeat what you've just said? I didn't quite follow that.
I think when you say slightly ahead of time, that's open to interpretation.
Yes, but he's been on leave since July and his term ends, his formal resignation takes effect from the end of the year. When does the contract normally end?
I understand the end of Dr. Patterson's term would have been in March 2020.
March, I see. But he was, the negotiations with the board had him leaving the office in July.
That's correct.
That's not slightly ahead of his term, is it?
Dr. Patterson is taking extended leave at the moment, and as part of his extended leave, he also has an opportunity to engage in an educational component of his contract, which I think he's enjoying at the moment.
I'm sure he is enjoying it, no end. It's about 11 months, isn't it? That's not slightly ahead of his term. That's why I say the statement issued by the board chair is not accurate, is it?
From the statement issued by the board chair is represented the discussion they will have had with Dr. Patterson.
Yeah. Now, what was the original offer put to Dr. Patterson then?
Sorry, that's not information I'm aware of.
What are you aware of in regard to this
Right.
matter?
I'm obviously aware that Dr. Patterson's resigned from the organisation.
Yes.
His final day is at the end of the year.
Well, we got that impression because that's what the public statement says. But what we've got here is the removal of a highly accomplished, internationally renowned public servant.
Indeed.
I'd like to know the terms under which, the circumstances under which Dr. Patterson has been removed from his position. Can you advise me on any of those matters at all?
The information I can provide to you is that which I've already done, Senator. That is the level of the information that I have regarding that situation.
That we've had, but the organisation's had to pay out the remainder of his term. Are you able to provide that on notice, how much that is, how much the legal costs have been involved, and the correspondence between the board and Dr. Patterson? Could you table all of that, please?
You can take that on notice, Senator Carr.
Was the minister involved in the removal of the CEO?
Again, Senator Carr, that's information I'll have to take, a question I'll have to take on notice.
Senator Hume, are you able to advise me on this matter?
Senator Carr, just before I do, can I correct the record to remind you that Mr. Patterson, Dr. Patterson resigned, was not removed?
I've heard of this. Yes, I've heard of this. You know, we put the Luger on the table and tell people to resign. Yes, I've heard of all of this. All right, now, what we do know, Senator, is that a proposition was put to Dr. Patterson, I repeat, a highly distinguished, internationally renowned CEO of an organisation, and if I remember rightly, the last time his contract was up for renewal, he went down to 28 days before he was offered a renewal on his contract. 28 days. And then we have this circumstance where he's shown the door. A series of legal proceedings have to be undertaken so that his contract's actually paid out. Otherwise, the Commonwealth would have faced unfair dismissal proceedings. That's the proposition I put to you, Mr. Jenkinson. Is that an accurate reflection of the events?
The discussion that I've had with Dr. Patterson since his resignation is that he chose to resign from the organisation, that he leaves at the end of the year, and that's the discussion with Dr. Patterson.
Yes. It's just short of his term, so it says in this statement, which is clearly inaccurate. But you'll be able to provide us with the correspondence and we'll get to the bottom of that. But then I see there's a review being undertaken by David Tune. There was a review undertaken, wasn't there?
That's correct, Senator Carr, there was.
Yes. What was the recommendation of the Tune review on the role of the CEO and the ANSTO executives? Have you got that material? Is that available to you?
Maybe we could ask one of my colleagues if they've got the information on that with them today.
Not on, we can take that on notice.
Senator Carr, we can take that on notice. There was a number of recommendations in the Tune review, and we can get
right.
that specific.
So, I just we'll come back to that. It's just been brought to my attention, I may have misheard you. Did you say the term, Dr. Patterson's term ended in March 2022?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I will check that detail for you, Senator Carr.
Can you tell me that?
I believe that's the case, Senator Carr. I can confirm
2022, so...
that. Yeah, that's correct, Senator.
It is correct?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So, slightly short of his term is grossly inaccurate. Who drafted the statement for the CEO chair?
Sure that I'll have to find that information out, Senator Carr.
You don't know that?
No, Senator Carr. Obviously, my role as acting CEO came in after these events, but I certainly can find that information out.
You've got deputies there. Can anyone else help us?
Not regarding that specific question at this point, Senator Carr, but we can provide the
Well,
information.
you wouldn't put Ms Bennett in a situation, a woman that's, what, former judge, making public statements that are grossly inaccurate? Surely the organisation wouldn't put Ms Bennett in a position where she's basically misleading the public.
Correct.
Wouldn't knowingly do that anyway, surely.
We would not knowingly do that, Senator Carr, correct.
But if that's the case, I've obviously misunderstood you. I thought you were implying that the contract ended March 2021. It's actually 22. So the 11-month payout on Dr. Patterson is way short of what he's entitled to.
So I'm not, as I said, we'll have to get the details of the conclusion of his contract and those terms to provide to you and the accuracy of what that is.
I see. Well, okay, so you can't tell me anything about the Tune review? Is that the case?
We can certainly discuss the Tune.
No, well, I want to know specifically about the role. What did the recommendations say about the role of the CEO and the ANSTO executive? What can you tell me about that?
Again, I'll take that question on notice, Senator Carr, because we need to get to the details. There was a lot of recommendation in the Tune review, and I'm not prepared for that question today. But we'll get back to you with that information.
I'm getting the impression, Mr. James, you're not prepared for very much today. You might want to have a talk to the person that prepares your briefing notes. Mr. Lucchetti, have you got access to the Tune review?
I don't have it with me,
No.
Senator.
Can you table the recommendations of the Tune review?
We can obtain them for you.
Thank you. I'd like them tabled if that's possible today.
Oh, sorry, Senator. I just need
We'll
to...
take that on notice.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
And can we have the recommendations I'm looking for, obviously, in regards to specifically on the role. I obviously want the full recommendations, but I'm interested because these issues were canvassed. David Tune's no slouch when it comes to administrative reviews. What about a full copy of the review?
So we're very happy to take that on notice.
Now, the Department of Finance, I understand, is also undertaking a scoping study with ANSTO on its governance and commercial arrangements. The expenditure for this element is not for publication due to commercial sensitivity. So can you tell me, Mr Ligeti, that'll be a question for you, won't it? Because, I mean, I suspect that the officers down at ANSTO haven't been told about this. So
No.
what's it for? What's this review for?
So, Senator, we're working with the Department of Finance and with our ANSTO colleagues and the Department of Health. We have only just started working on this initiative, and it's focusing on a range of matters, and we've only met once. We haven't formalised terms of reference.
No.
But it's looking
So no
amongst,
terms of reference, right?
Well, no, they're being developed, Senator.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So they're in draft, but they're not final. But just to give you an idea, there's a range of things. It will inform future funding requests of government. It also will consider national security issues in regard to ANSTO and ANSTO's standing as a corporate government entity too.
I see. Now, did Mr. Jenkinson, when did ANSTO find out about this review?
In the recent budget proposals that went through in the round of the budget, we were informed and notified that this review was underway, or would be underway.
So you found out what was announced in the budget, was that?
We had some notification prior to that it would be in the budget.
I see. So you were told that something would be in the budget. You weren't consulted about the review prior to the budget?
We had some discussion around the content of what the review contained, so we were involved.
So when you say you had some discussion, what's the nature of those discussions? Does it mean you were told it'll be in the budget?
I'll just hand to my colleague, Mr. John Edge, who can talk to that.
Thank you.
Morning, Senator. John Edge, Chief Operating Officer of ANSTO. So we were broadly aware that a study would be announced in the budget. The detail of the study in terms of reference or other details were not shared with us. We were just made aware of the fact that this process was about to be announced, and we remain ready to be engaged with the department as appropriate.
Thank you very much. So, broadly aware, that usually means you picked up the rumour. Did you approach the department about it? Or did the department approach you?
Did we approach the department about it?
Yeah, when you heard the rumour that there was going to be a review into your operations, that's what broadly aware means in public service speak, the S-Minister speak. Broadly aware, in my experience, that's how it comes back. You heard a rumour that was going to be a line in the budget, but you said that the terms of reference, detail hadn't been shared with you, but I take it you rang the department and said, what's all this about? Is that how it worked?
It was a bit more formal than that, in that we meet regularly with our colleagues in Canberra and we talk about issues that we're working on, issues that are coming up, about to be announced.
So what date was that? What date was that? Did you write a letter? What date did you raise with the officers?
We'd have to take specific dates on notice, but there would have been some conversations about general issues with our colleagues in the portfolio department and others.
Sure.
This is just a regular business for us, is talking about what's happening in government.
Right. So, Mr. Leccetti, when did you advise the agency that there was going to be a review into their operations?
Senator, I can't provide you with a date. There would have been discussions, as Mr. Edge mentioned. We regularly talk to each other, so when we became aware as part of the budget deliberations, we would have spoken with our colleagues at ANSTO.
I see. When did you become aware? Presumably you were told too, were you?
That's right. I don't have a specific date, so I could take that on notice if that helps. And
this review, it'll be looking into the impact of the ANSTO's business model in regard to Molly 99 production line, the line itself, isn't it?
No, this is more broadly looking across the business entity itself.
The whole operation. So it's not about the privatisation of the Molly 99 production facilities.
So that could be one element of it, but as I said, the terms of reference haven't been finalised.
I see. And what other elements, apart from the privatisation of the production of Molly 99?
Sorry, the question, Senator, was...
What other elements of the operations of ANSTO's business model are you looking at?
Well, it's right across its core operations, Senator.
Senator, I think that sort of, as Mr. Licketti said, the terms of reference haven't been finalised yet,
Yeah.
so I don't think we want to speculate. We've taken on notice.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll speculate.
now.
Dr Patterson had to be removed so you could get into the privatisation of Molly 99 facilities.
So, Senator, you know that these officers can't
No,
respond to
no,
that.
I
Can I just say, Senator...
put that as issue. But I can ask the Minister, is that the case? Dr Patterson, did he have to be removed so that the privatisation inquiry could get underway for Molly 99?
Senator, I think you're drawing a very long bow, but I can't answer that.
Might not be so long.
Well, you haven't given us a reason why this had to be removed. I can only presume the two events are linked.
Senator, I don't think anyone has said that Dr Patterson was removed.
No. I have.
Sorry, correction.
Dr Patterson hasn't.
When will the
Just
review be
remind
concluded?
I'll have to take that on notice. That's not settled, Senator.
How much money is involved?
I don't think the budget papers specified a
That's
number.
right.
No.
So it's an unlimited review. It's not like finance.
Well, I suspect it may be, Senator, if there's any sort of tender for external work involved, normal practice would be to not disclose
I
how
see.
much is...
So what do you have in mind for an external tender? What's the...
I don't have any figure in mind, Senator.
Sorry, now what's the proposal for an external tender? What, for a reviewer or... why have you raised the issue of an external tender?
No, I've simply said that... Sorry, Secretary, were you going to...
Senator, can I just say, so I appreciate the point you're making, but you and I both know there is nothing unusual about this process. You know it, and I do too.
I do.
A budget announcement has been made that there will be a review. That is a perfectly legitimate activity of government. There was appropriate consultation beforehand. The officers have given you evidence that there'll be. Can I finish, please? Yeah. The officers have given you evidence that there'll be appropriate consultation and consideration thereafter. Senator, it's fair enough you raised the issue about the Mr. Williamson referring to the external consultant. Well, Mr. Tune, who you called out earlier, was an external consultant. That's again standard practice and standard consideration.
Mr. Frederick.
It is nothing unusual about getting an external consultant. But the privatisation of our major radiopharmaceutical facility is a matter of considerable public importance. Now, I'd like to know how much money has been put aside for this review. I'd like to know what the circumstances are, what the issues are that are being reviewed. We're looking at the management of the operation, because you said all the core functions of ANSTO. Now, we don't even know for how long this review will run. What we've got is a line item in the budget to say an external review run by finance. You say there have been consultations. The officers down at ANSTO found out about it on the grapevine. I would have suggested...
That is your evidence, not the officers'
That is the evidence they've presented.
I don't believe that's
true. And I'm
true.
saying to you, your own officers seem to me to be a little vague about how they've discovered it. Now, I think we're entitled to know. You don't even know what the terms of reference are yet. Now, and since when does the Department of Finance, and given your long history in this place, since when does the Department of Finance hand out an unlimited amount of money for a review into an organisation like ANSTO?
So, Senator, your representation of it as an unlimited amount of money, as you know, is not correct.
Well, Mr.
The budget.
Frederick.
Can I finish, please?
Yes.
The amount of money is not for publication. In terms of the questions you raised, Senator...
Sorry, it's a secret review.
In terms of... Senator, you know that it's perfectly appropriate in the budget to present a measure as not for publication when it can potentially involve a subsequent negotiation on a consultant, as to use the model you've referred to, someone like a David Tune. So again, that's perfectly legitimate. In fairness to you, Senator, the questions that you've asked, we will take on notice and we will give you answers to those questions.
You see, there's a number of issues. There is the price you pay to a consultant to undertake a review, then there's the cost of the review overall. There is normally a budget set for a review, which is not the same thing as the amount of money you pay to a consultant. I want to know what the amount of money is that has been set aside for this review.
And we will provide you that on notice.
And I'm surprised it's not been provided in the budget papers.
We'll take it on notice, Senator.
Sorry, Senator Pratt.
I just
Sorry,
wanted...
Senator Pratt, before I go to you, Senator Betts has questions for ANSTO. Has come from another committee which he's chairing and needs to return to in order to ask them.
Thank
so
you.
with your agreement, I'll go to Senator Betts now and then I'll come to you next. Senator Betts.
That is exceptionally kind, and thank you, Chair, and thank you to other senators on the committee for that. And officials, is ANSTO involved with a Generation 4 nuclear reactor?
Senator, you'll need to ask the questions to the officers online.
All
in this
right.
new world we're in, that's the ANSTO executive.
All right,
meeting,
so I've got to look at the screen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Minister, I can't look at you. I've got to look down there. Right, did we get the question?
So, yes, Senator, ANSTO represents Australia on the Generation 4 International Forum. We participate in that forum to provide input and expertise around future developments in nuclear engineering and nuclear technology. It's a treaty-level arrangement and we represent Australia in that forum.
And are we working with any other organisation in developing what I understand are called Generation 4 nuclear reactors?
We participate in that committee as part of the development and understanding of technologies for Generation 4. We don't work with particular organisations to develop or build a specific reactor.
All right. Do we partner with any other organisations in that task?
Yes, we do.
All right. Can you name them, please? Or where do they emanate from? Which countries?
We can take that on notice, Senator. There is a Generation 4 International Forum website which lists the member states, but we can take that on notice.
Do we have any specific arrangements with any organisations in the People's Republic of China?
Senator, we have some fairly inactive memoranda of understanding.
So sorry, can you speak up, please?
I said, Senator, we have some fairly inactive memoranda of understanding with institutes in the People's Republic of China, but I'm not aware of any current work going on under those arrangements.
All right. If you could give us a list on notice of those, that would be very helpful. And advise as to when those arrangements went into, for want of a better term, inactive mode.
Take that on notice, Senator.
Look, thank you. Were we in any arrangement with any Chinese researchers or organisations as we sought to develop the SynRock technology?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
All right, if you can take that on notice, that would be very helpful. Is ANSTO aware of the civil military doctrine that the People's Republic of China requires all its researchers to abide by?
Senator, we have been aware of the situation with the People's Republic of China and some other countries for a long time. We're in the nuclear space, so there's always been sensitivities around and limits to our cooperation with particular states, and China's no exception to that.
And the question was, is ANSTO aware of the civil military doctrine?
Not in those terms, Senator.
Sorry, not
in that term.
Not in that term.
If you're talking about, so we're aware that there is let's say, an incomplete separation between the civil and military sectors in China, and we have always conducted ourselves in accordance with that awareness.
Do you collaborate with the Department of Foreign Affairs in entering into arrangements with other countries or organisations in other countries to get advice as to the appropriateness of your collaborations?
Yes, we do.
All right. Did you get such advice in relation to ANSTO, a strategic partnership with the Shanghai Institute of Applied Physics?
So that partnership was entered into in around 2012. I can check that on notice.
Sorry?
But entered into around 2012, 2011, somewhere around there. I can take the precise date on notice, and it was certainly entered into with the full knowledge of the Australian government.
So there was no collaboration after 2012?
That collaboration proceeded for a period, but as far as I'm aware, is no longer active. Again,
Yeah.
I'll take on notice when exactly that. I've already taken on notice when that ceased.
So if you can take on notice when it started and when it ended, and the full details of that collaboration would be very helpful. Were SINAP members introduced to the innovation precinct, which is under development at ANSTO, or was under development at ANSTO?
No.
You might like to take that on notice, because I have a document in front of me purportedly from ANSTO suggesting that CEO A.D. Patterson, I know that was some time ago, the predecessor, but welcomed the agreement as it was consistent with ANSTO and Australia's interest in and support of Generation 4 reactor systems, in particular the MSR and TSMR systems. Dr. Patterson introduced SINAP members to the Innovation Precinct, which is under development at ANSTO. So you might like to take that on notice and provide us with a full explanation of that, and that might then lead to other questions at another time. Thank you, Chair, thank you to the committee, and thank you, ANSTO officials.
Thank you. I believe Senator Carr has further questions.
One question. Can I ask the officials, has ANSTO been advised of any breaches of the Defence Export Control Act or any subsidiary regulations concerning the Defence Export Control Act by ANSTO or its associates?
No, Senator. Where necessary, we have sought and obtained the necessary permits under the Defence Export Control legislation.
Yes. I've asked this question on a number of occasions. I'm just asking you again, can you update us? Have you been advised of any breaches by ANSTO or any of its associated entities of the Defence Export Control Act or any of its associated regulatory entities?
No.
No. Thank you.
Chair, if I may quickly,
of course.
Thank you for Senator Carr's intervention, because it now allows me to source the document from which I quoted. It's published on the 11th of March 2019 by ANSTO staff.
So what? So what?
Sorry, Senator Carr, no one's been commenting on your questions this morning. If you could frame commenting on Senator Betts'.
What it means is that which I quoted about ANSTO's involvement with SINAP members is a little bit closer to today's date than 2012.
Is it a breach
suggested.
of any law
Senator Carr,
or regulation?
Senator Carr, you don't have the call.
I did not make any allegations of breach of law or anything else, but the sensitivity of the colleague who has been praised
you've
by
made
the
accusations.
CCP speaks for itself. Speaks for itself.
Order. Senator Carr, you can debate this in the chamber. Order.
No wonder the CCP praises
Order,
you.
Senator Betts. This is not helpful. Order. This is not helpful on anyone's behalf. Order. You can debate this in the chamber should you wish. Senator Betts and Senator Carr, this is order. Order. This is not the place to do this. If you need to do it in the chamber, not in estimates.
Thank you to ANSTO officials, and I look forward to the answers on notice.
Thank you, Senator Betts. Senator Pratt. Oh, sorry, Senator Shaw.
Yeah, good. Thanks very much. I just want to turn to the fault at the Lucas Heights nuclear facility just recently. There's the media reports, and I want to ask a series of questions. Of course, it's if you can just draw to what actually happened. I'm particularly concerned, of course, one, that there's an incident there and exposure of workers, but also the fact that there, as I understand it, that quotes from Charles Sturt University Associate Professor Jeff Curry concerned about the 12,000 patients may have had their procedures cancelled, and also that there will be a particular negative effect on rural and regional Australia. So I might just start, what happened?
Thanks, Senator. I can take you through the events that happened regarding the outage in our nuclear medicine facility recently. We had an impact where in the containment of our hot cells, a light bulb fitting failed and created some fumes in the facility. As is appropriate, if we get any event in the facility, particularly something like fumes, the facility was evacuated. What I can tell you is there was no safety to workers involved in this incident. They were evacuated straight away. As a result of that, that did cause a disruption to our normal supply of nuclear medicine. We were out for just over a week in terms of domestic production, and that had a subsequent impact on the normal distribution of domestic supplies. To mitigate and cover off against that, we organised for importation of product from overseas to cover as much as possible of the shortfall that we could. Importantly, the distribution of that to regional and rural areas was considered with our working group, which involved nuclear physicians from the societies, representatives, including Jeff Curry from the rural and regional areas, to ensure that the distribution of nuclear medicine that we were getting in was in line with the expectation of our key customers, the clients, the nuclear medicine group, and minimised any impact that would have on patients receiving critical scans. We were then back up and running in just over a week and back to normal production and making sure that we caught up against that. So while our normal weekly production is 12,000 doses, not all of those were missed because we met some of them through import. It was prioritised by communication with the key stakeholders to ensure that we delivered them in the most appropriate way across Australia. And the speed at which the facility came back to production was very effective. And again, I'd like to repeat that this was not an issue that caused safety to workers at ANSTO. That is obviously a primary concern for us. It was within the containment of our nuclear environment, the hot cell, and it was managed appropriately and as we would expect it to be, so we were returned to safe operations as soon as possible.
Good, thank you. How many, you mentioned, of course, there's 12,000 dosages a week. How many procedures were cancelled as a result of this incident?
I can't give you a precise number because our nuclear medicine clinicians and our community work incredibly effectively at times like this, and they reschedule and reprioritise people, maybe move them out by a couple of days, use different levels of activity to make sure they make the most important cases first. And I think we should be entirely grateful for the quality of the clinicians we have doing that, so they minimise any impact.
Thanks. Just going back, so you had 12,000 normal doses that would go out. You said you imported some doses to cover that. What was the shortfall from 12,000 in comparison with the imports?
I would have to get you a very specific number on notice. I can't give you that information, but it would not be anywhere near the level of 12,000 because of the way that prioritisation is done.
So that means there would be quite a few people that were delayed receiving their cancer treatment as a result of the incident?
There would have been a number of people certainly delayed receiving diagnostic scans and then potentially the associated treatment that they need as a result of that diagnosis. That could have happened.
I appreciate that there's to get a full figure would require some investigation. Have you got a rough estimate of how many?
I don't have a rough estimate. I think it would be probably wrong to give you a rough estimate. It's not going to be the correct number. I prefer to work with the community. My colleagues present a figure to me around 50%, but I think we could have to work that up into what is an absolute number.
Yeah, if you can give me the absolute number, and thanks for the, appreciate that you've given me a broad figure, 50%, yet to be checked. And you've said supplies return to normal levels. There was also an incident in September where 2 workers were exposed to radiation. What's the status of those workers now?
So I think that was September last year.
Yes.
And those workers returned within 2 to 3 days back to the facility and were cleared by medical specialists and are just back at work under normal operations.
Now, you've confirmed that the rural and regional areas are now back to their normal service?
So our normal domestic supply went out as expected on Sunday, and so therefore they will be receiving their routine and expected supplies.
Have you provided the government, and you're giving the government ongoing reports regarding disruptions that have occurred over the last couple of years? So you give them regular reports?
That's correct. Obviously, any outage is clearly disappointing and not entirely appropriate from our point of view. We're very concerned that we don't deliver the appropriate nuclear medicines when they're needed. So we communicate frequently with the government to ensure that they know what's happening, when it's happening, and more importantly, any mitigation steps that we take to ensure the minimising of the impact.
Now, I have a personal interest in this as well because I used to live in Holsworthy, just down the road from Menai, and I grew up in the Shire. Probably the only thing the Prime Minister and I, or actually we 2 things. We both barracked for the Sharks, and he lives in the Shire. I grew up in the Shire and was born there. Regarding these disruptions, which are obviously it's in a very important facility, what are you putting in place to ensure that we don't have medical services disrupted? And I'm particularly mindful of your answer before that there was 12,000 short, there was 12,000 normal doses, roughly a figure of 50% short of those dosages going out. Regional and rural Australia obviously carry the brunt of that. What are we putting in place to make sure that we don't fall into this problem again? This is quite a concerning situation.
Correct. In the recent budget announcement, there was some funds provided to ANSTO, which was to help support nuclear medicine production, vital maintenance required within the current facilities to ensure that we can make reliable supply for our domestic market. Other than that, we have submitted to the government an independent study that was commissioned to look at future nuclear medicine supply in Australia, and that is under consideration from the government.
Guys, I just want to get clear then, during the COVID-19 inquiry, and it follows through from your answer just then, you raised about the challenges with getting supplies from overseas and transporting supplies around the country, of course, because of the limited commercial flights. Has any work been done by ANSTO or the government, and where's that? If that work's been carried out, where is it up to, regarding access to long-term financial impacts of Australia not having a reliable nuclear medicine supply? And just want to take this as well. Have we got the costs associated with having transport supplies from overseas?
So the recent independent study reviewed reliable supply of nuclear medicines into Australia. That took into consideration all options, both domestic production and alternate supplies from overseas. That is the independent review that's been completed and submitted to government. So it considers all the options. And you're absolutely correct that obviously during COVID we saw significant challenges in terms of international supply of many products, included within that were in nuclear medicine. Notwithstanding, I've already talked to you about a disappointing disruption in the last week, which we've now overcome, but largely during the crisis of COVID, where there were significant global challenges in logistics, Australia was able to receive all its nuclear medicines because we have domestic manufacture of nuclear medicines at ANSTO. So that provided us with some significant protection from some of those difficulties other countries experienced. That would also include other countries who would routinely have taken export from ANSTO to support their nuclear medicine community. So the review, independent review to understand the best provision of nuclear medicine into the future is with the government for decision. ANSTO continues to use funds supplied by the government to ensure reliable supply under the current facilities.
Can you just go back? You mentioned there was a report that you've presented to government. Is that report publicly available, or can you make it available to this committee?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
You just mentioned there was a report that's been produced in dealing with those matters. Is that publicly available already, or?
It's not publicly available, since it's been provided to the government for a decision-making process.
So obviously that's then not available to the committee.
What kind
Correct.
of decisions?
Yeah.
So decisions on the best way for reliable supply of nuclear medicine for the future of Australia.
Senator Sheldon, Senator Rennick has indicated he has some questions too. How are you going with your time?
I've just got one more.
Okay, great.
The government funded a business case to look at long-term nuclear medicine supply in Australia, which we just talked about. So the government's been presented with that business case. Regarding progressing the business case, has it looked at the urgent impacts caused by ongoing disruptions in particular? And if you've got separate from that, have you got what the cost is to the economy for these disruptions that we've had? Have you got any figures on that you can make available to the committee?
I don't have any figures to hand and would have to check to see if we have anything that is robust that we can provide. In terms of the process and the urgency of a facility or any future supply of nuclear medicine, I'm sure you all understand that building facilities in nuclear medicine is a process that takes time and needs to be fully understood. So from our point of view, the money that's been provided recently in the budget is for us to invest in making sure that our current facility is robust as possible while the government undergoes a decision-making process for the best way forward for nuclear medicine, because it's such a critical component of Australian healthcare to ensure that we have good diagnosis, which leads to good healthcare. And you mentioned having personal connections with people. I think most people would have a personal connection with somebody who suffers from either cancer or heart disease, which are the two key areas in which diagnostic medicine plays a role. So it is a very important part of Australian healthcare, and that decision-making process needs to be a robust one.
Sorry, just something quick. Is it just have you got an expectation on when this report will come back?
I don't have a date on that at this stage. One of my colleagues.
Senator, it's being considered by government, so that will take however long government takes to consider it. I guess we're ready to support our colleagues in the industry department and others in government with any questions or something about that, but that's a matter for government.
Good, thanks very much. Just then to the Minister, just very quickly, have you got an expectation when the report might be dealt with and come back? Obviously, it's an extremely urgent matter. It's a significant report.
I can't answer you that, Senator Sheldon, but I can take it on notice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Senator Rennick.
Yeah, hi guys. I was just wondering, have you looked at the application chirped pulse amplification as a means of transmuting radioactive waste in order to reduce its half-life? Do you guys investigate all that stuff?
Can I just ask you to repeat the question, because it just not quite came through clearly there, please?
Okay. Have you looked at the application, the technique chirped pulse amplification, which uses laser pulses to transmute radioactive waste in order to reduce its half-life?
Look, we'll take on notice that specific technique you're talking about, but I have a number of colleagues at ANSTO, waste management professionals and scientists looking into waste management, so I'm sure that we'll be able to come back to the quality response.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Very efficient, Senator Rennick. Are there any further questions for ANSTO? Senator Carr, any further questions for ANSTO?
Look, just quickly, the growth in the radiopharmaceutical production, you're looking at trying to get it up to about, 3.5 million doses a year. That's the case over the forward estimates? Is that right?
Correct. We are looking to grow our nuclear medicine business with export molybdenum as well as our domestic market.
Yeah. Okay, so the problem essentially is that, and I think what Senator Sheldon's drawn our attention to is the building is not fit for purpose. You've been provided with some monies to do some essential repairs. Have I understood that correctly?
So,
Senator Carr, the budget announcement about funding for ANSTO includes $93.8 million to maintain our main production facility and respond to recent nuclear medicine production disruptions. So that's a substantial amount of money.
Sure. I understand that, but this has been an ongoing issue about the building itself. It's now a very old facility. It was originally put down about the 1950s from memory. And essentially the problem is that it's not fit for purpose. That's why they're having these industrial accidents. Was that a fair description of the problem?
I would agree that the facility is an old facility. It's fit for purpose in that it meets high standards of compliance.
Yeah, it meets your licence requirements. I should rephrase that. It's within licence requirements, right? But there is a serious deficiency because we've had, and I think Senator Sheldon's drawn our attention to this ongoing problem of disruption to the production process because of the breakdown in the production procedures. Is that correct?
I think if you're rebuilding a new facility, a modern manufacturing facility today, it would be different to the current facility that we have.
That's right, because it's essentially an old facility that's been retrofitted, the technology's changed, and the difficulty is that the workers on site are having difficulty coping with the circumstances of an obsolete set of arrangements. My question goes to the amount of money that has been provided for updating that facility. Is that enough to patch it up, or is it a rebuild actually what's required?
So the money that we've been provided to date will serve very well to mitigate and provide reliable supply while a decision is made on the long-term future of nuclear medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, a replacement building for manufacturing nuclear medicines would be an ideal solution. We have to make those decisions with all the right information to make sure we use the right technology and design a building that can be fit for purpose for many years to come.
So this review that's underway, is it independent of the review the Finance Department has announced? Or is it part of the same process?
That's correct, it's independent.
Independent, okay. And so what's being proposed in this budget is a temporary fix to allow you to be able to meet your expectations of what I see is 3.6 million doses to 2024, right? That's your target? Is that right? 3.6 million doses?
And that is for us to meet our forward estimations.
Yeah. So it is only a temporary fix?
This is money to ensure the facility can provide a reliable output over that period.
Yeah, but what's really needed is a rebuild.
Ideally, as with any manufacturing facility, as time goes on, replacing and upgrading them is critical, and that's no different for this radiopharmaceutical facility.
So how confident are you of meeting the budget targeted number here that I see on your PBS of 3,690,518 radiopharmaceutical doses by 23-24?
With the facilities we have and the money that we've been given to maintain facilities, I think we will have good set of assumptions and good practice in place to meet those expectations. I can't predict another COVID, which could impact us. But in terms of the operating components we're in control of, we have a significant amount of spend to deliver reliable supply over that period.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carr. If there are no further questions for ANSTO,